Each morning, long before any visitors, the animals call out, claiming territories in a man-made landscape thousands of miles from their ancestral homes. Today, there are more than 5 billion people on Earth. Never have we humans exercised such dominion over nature, nor been so removed from it. And yet we still wonder at living things. We know we are part of nature. Our animal past flows through our minds and bodies. And so, living in cities, we make zoos. And in searching for connections to wild creatures, we cage them.
That was nice. Good boy, Herc.
It seems the more urbanized we've become, the more we long for some remembered or imagined contact with wild animals. Each year, more people in the United States visit zoos than attend the arenas and stadiums of all the major professional sports teams combined. In the heart of the nation's capital, the Smithsonian's National Zoo has been welcoming visitors for over a century. Why do they come to the zoo? What do we expect to find by looking at the animals?
How's a lion go?
Hey, you're cute. I think they're friends, really. What do you think?
Come on. Come on. Oh, yes. You're a beautiful girl. Yes, you are. Yes. It's your dad. Your dad. Isn't she beautiful? Do you like those legs?
Looks like a red fox almost.
I think she looks like a can-can dancer in black stockings.
The park's 8th director, Dr. Michael Robinson, combines the qualities of an administrator, fundraiser, research scientist, and plain old animal fancier.
Knows me, and when there's nobody around,
Do you go in there?
No. She's still a wild animal.
My feeling is that as a species, we humans have spent 99% of our existence as hunters and gatherers. And we've been very, very close to nature. 1 million years doing that and only 10,000 civilized. And that made us really dependent on animals and plants in many ways. And I think we have built into our innate behavior a response to animals.
All of us feel a profound need to connect with animals, to affirm some bond shrouded in the deep evolutionary past. It is as if we were searching for kindred spirits, contemplating some hidden, elusive part of ourselves.
Try a hoots.
Say something, bird. Moves its head when I do that, John.
He's watching you.
If I could be any animal in the zoo, I think I would be the giraffe.
I like to be an elephant. I like to be a monkey.
Why?
Because I like monkeys.
I'd like to be a crocodile, I think, because they get to sleep in the water all day.
Probably a pretty bird, an elegant bird.
Probably a cheetah, but I like to run fast. A zebra.
Probably a bear.
My favorite animal is the polar bear.
Why?
Well, because he's not indigenous to this area. He's usually pure white and is able to take care of himself when the need arises.
I think a bald eagle.
A lion. Cockroach.
I think one of the problems about wild creatures is that we never really see them as wild creatures living in the real world. We look upon them as projections of ourselves and our friends, and we anthropomorphize about animals. And that's a tragic error in many ways. You get to a stage of identification with them that can be completely misleading. One of the explanations is that certain animals have facial proportions that are pleasing to a large number of human beings.
I got a teddy bear just like this.
It's a theory of Konrad Lorenz's, the famous Austrian ethologist, that animals that roughly have the same proportions of facial dimensions as human babies elicit a kind of parenting response in humans. That means a high forehead, large eyes, and a very short nose. And pandas in particular are perfect. But pandas, which seem to be benign, gentle creatures, are actually very savage and very solitary and very aggressive.
He's okay. You won't have to back up.
Okay.
Did he buy you?
I think that zoos have part of their attraction to people in a kind of reversion to our original curiosity about the natural world.
It loves you.
But I think that curiosity had enormous survival value. It was our aboriginal biology.
Our earliest connections to animals were magical, embodying primordial hopes and fears, messages and promises. Animals once stood at the center of our world, their existence intimately tied to ours. No society of hunter-gatherers ever collected and displayed wild animals in zoos. The first zoos coincide with the beginnings of the great ancient civilizations. They were created for the pleasure of kings, queens, emperors, and pharaohs.
They seem to have been symbols of imperial power, of domination over the animal world. If you can have in your court a giant elephant, then you are really showing some kind of extraordinary power. It's like having 4 or 5 Rolls Royces in your driveway nowadays.
The might and power of the Persian emperor was celebrated in a zoo called a Paradisos, from which the biblical Garden of Eden takes its name, paradise. And God blessed them, saying, "Fill the earth and subdue it, and have dominion over the fish of the sea and the birds of the air and every living thing that moves upon the earth."
The attitude that human beings are a distinct creation and separate from the rest of the animal kingdom, on a pinnacle, lower than the angels but higher than the animals, can lead in a naive way to an attitude towards animals that they are so different that we can exploit them, we can subject them to privations, we can be cruel to them, and it's not as if we were dealing with something with an immortal soul or some prospect of salvation, and therefore they can be used.
The great public zoos of the 19th century were founded just as animals began to disappear from everyday life. Zoos advertised themselves as institutions for scientific observation and public instruction. But whatever the intentions, they continued to demonstrate man's superiority over the brute beasts.
One of the early 19th century drives in almost every kind of public exhibition facility was to have as many different kinds of things as you could possibly accumulate. And early zoos reflected that kind of art gallery approach. You'd have one lion, one tiger, one brown bear, one black bear. And it was essentially a series of masterpieces hung in frames of steel, you know, the penitentiary collectionist approach.
Habitat zoos were a late 19th century innovation. Separated from the visitor by deep moats, wild animals roamed freely in simulated habitats that suggested the powerful link between the animals and the natural world from which they had been removed. No more cages, no more bars. The Habitat Zoo became the model for our own zoos today.
Habitat zoos gave the public the impression that they were seeing life in the wild, but it was partly window dressing. And even now, we still build exhibits that look right to human visitors and aren't necessarily a reflection of the kind of world in which the animal itself lives.
We really should be regarding them as separate species entitled to their own lives, and that's what good zoos are trying to do, to give them conditions in which their own lives can be fully realized.
But can a wild animal's life ever be fully realized within the confines of a zoo? People who work in zoos know how easily that ancient repertory of behavior can be stunted by concerned but nonetheless human care. Can a wild animal remain wild, living in a man-made home?
Say hi to those guys.
Nancy is 35 years old and has lived in the zoo since she was a calf. For 14 years, she lived alone, which is very difficult for a female elephant. John Lenhart helped change all that.
In the wild, elephants have a social hierarchy. The females live in social groups all their lives. The males...
John Lenhart is in charge of the elephant house. He has lived among elephants for 13 years.
After that. The females, however, are social animals.
Elephants, like other intelligent mammals with complex behaviors, don't easily adjust to life in the zoo. The zoo must study them carefully to find outlets for their natural behavior.
When we moved Nancy in with this group, we suspected she would be a dominant animal because her personality is so strong. But she's just taken over this herd.
After just 10 months in the elephant family, through sheer physical intimidation, Nancy has become the matriarch.
Our elephants are lined up and are walking. Our first elephant in line is Nancy. In the middle, we have Shanti.
Every morning, the elephants give a performance that, to an outsider, might smack of Barnum and Bailey. But to zoo people, is a demonstration of their care.
It's not easy to give a medical exam to an elephant. Since elephants have very sensitive skin, this is how we check their skin for scrapes and cuts. Every day, the keepers check their feet for cracks and rocks embedded in their paths. We hope you've enjoyed the elephants today. We want you to remember that they are an endangered species.
Without training, we can't provide the care that elephants need. I think they're able to be trained because they're used to being in a society that has a hierarchy. So we have to develop our relationship with the elephants as part of their society, but at the top of the hierarchy.
Lift. Steady.
Elephants are intelligent, powerful, and dangerous.
All right.
They injure more keepers than any other zoo animal. When Melba Brown joined the elephant family just 8 months ago, she had never worked with elephants before. Now she must face all 10,000 pounds of Nancy.
For Melba, who is the newest member of the unit, she's had to work herself into the system. She's had to work herself up through the hierarchy. And now it's the struggle to get control of Nancy.
I remember the first time I walked in with all 3 elephants, and I was in another world. It was like 3 walls just moving around me.
Melba attempts to handle Nancy with methods over 3,000 years old. Voice commands and the hooked rod called an ankus, that simulates one elephant tusking another.
When I first came up here, I wasn't allowed to give commands to the elephants. I basically stayed next to a keeper. When they worked the elephants, I was constantly watching the elephant as well as the keeper, seeing how she presented herself, how much force she used when she spoke, the hook marks I had to pay particular attention to. And I did a lot of watching, and slowly I would try giving commands, but always the keeper would be next to me to back it up in case they didn't do it.
For Melba to find acceptance as part of the elephant family takes understanding, trust, and courage on the part of both Melba and Nancy.
It's hard. It's hard for the people that come in new and very frustrating because it's so time-consuming. It doesn't take a day or a week. It takes months, and it's only been 8 months. I'd say that after 12 or 13 years of training elephants myself, I'm just now sort of getting the hang of it.
When you command an elephant, the animal must respond. Melba cannot afford to lose face.
I wanted to run, but I knew if I did run, I could just run right out of the elephant house because I couldn't work them if I was afraid of her. So even though I was scared to death, I had to stand up and look in her face and tell her, Nancy, no. I think the greatest triumph for me would be to do the show solo with all 3 elephants. Kathy can do it right now. Marie can do it right now. I can't do it right now. So I think that would be the ultimate.
Come on, AZ. Yeah. AZ, don't get jealous. Just look at the baby. You.
Get off of me. It's been long enough. Are they done? No, they're gonna go smoke cigarettes.
Hey, Bear.
He's so cute. Smokey the bear.
He's doing walking back and forth just where the water's at, right? See how he goes back and forth?
I need to walking back and forth something.
I didn't know why he's turning around.
That makes me nervous. Bear's probably trying to see if he can get out. Oh.
Smokey is pacing. This we call stereotypic pacing. Stereotypies are behavior patterns that are very fixed in form and that are performed repeatedly and that also have no apparent function for the animal. They're very common in zoo animals, particularly in bears. If you watch him closely, you'll see that taking 17 steps each way before he turns and starts back. And he'll do this for up to 8 hours a day in some seasons. It's considered an abnormal or an unnatural behavior. Bears in the wild do not pace repetitively like Smokey does.
You have the peanuts over there?
Peanuts and raisins, mulberries,
Right.
and the chow, bear chow.
Right.
Animals like bears present the most difficult problems for the concerned zookeeper.
Okay.
The National Zoo is working with Kathy Carlstead, a specialist in animal behavior, to try and solve them.
I'm going to put some raisins in here in the straw.
She is attempting to reduce Smokey's pacing by changing the way he is fed.
Fill this ball up with peanuts. I'll put some bread under here. Most bears in zoos are fed once a day. They're fed very concentrated food, such as meat, that has a very low handling time. Whereas in the wild, eating meat, they would have to tear an animal apart. It would take some time and some effort for them to consume it. In the wild, survival is based on actively searching for food for large amounts of time. In captivity, this motivation all goes to waste. This is the way black bears live. This is how they get their food. They dig, they rake through debris, they rummage around. And this is the kind of things we should try to portray in zoos also. And the way we feed bears in zoos just really doesn't come near to that. Feeding Smokey in his exhibit has a very profound effect on his behavior. We reduced his pacing behavior from 3 to 4 hours a day down to about 20 minutes a day.
I don't like zoos very much because I like animals in the wild. And I've been fortunate to be able to see animals in the wild. And
Dale Marcellini is assistant director for animal exhibits and in charge of the reptile house.
So zoos make me a little uncomfortable. And some animals make me more uncomfortable than others in zoos. And I think that's true of almost anybody. If you talk about a gorilla in a zoo, it makes me not feel real comfortable seeing gorillas in zoos. Even though I work in a zoo, I worry about gorillas in zoos. They're bright, they're intelligent animals. They live in big social groups. They do a lot of foraging. They cover a lot of ground in their lives. There's a lot of things we can't do. It's hard to do things for gorillas in zoos and make them comfortable.
Melanie Bond has been a keeper in the Great Ape House for 16 years. It is her job to try and make the zoo gorillas comfortable.
Hey, her. Taking care of these animals in many ways is a maternal thing, a paternal thing. You have to give 100% to them because they read you. Look, I want to do your nails. They're very honest and they understand communicating on a straightforward level. And that kind of trust, that kind of acceptance, they're helping us take care of them. And it's one of the most rewarding things about what I do. Can I fix it? You know, this is important. If you have a baby, we don't want you to scratch it. Can I see your hand? Good girl. Good girl. Oh, what a good girl.
In Melanie's 16 years with the zoo, a lot has changed. These gorillas used to live in cages, alone. They were aggressive animals who would neither mate nor rear young. Today, they live in a family, much like their wild cousins. But this is an unusual family, fashioned by the zoo. None of these gorillas are related.
We've built this thing that looks like a family, that seems to be functioning like a family. And for the younger animals, Gus and Madeira and Kuya, the social experience may be enough for them to lead normal lives, to become normal breeding animals and good parents themselves. When we first started keeping gorillas in zoos, we didn't know anything about life in the wild. We didn't know what their social structure was, how important it was to live in family groups. And we're trying to recoup the losses from not having that knowledge when we first started breeding gorillas.
His name is Hercules, but everyone at the zoo calls him Herc. He has lived in zoos for 24 years without a mate. Herc has rejected every female the zoo has ever found for him.
It's unfortunate that what we tried to do for Hercules didn't work. It's like dating, you know, everybody you date isn't the person you're going to marry, and it's that way for gorillas too. They have very specific preferences, and the 3 females that we had just weren't the kind of females that he apparently wants.
Hi, gorilla. Hi.
Hercules is a boy, and you know what's going to happen to him in a couple of days that's very special? He's going to go from this zoo to another zoo in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and he's going to get a girlfriend. So Hercules going to go up there to live with a female named Zakula. And we think that's really nice for him.
Mitch says that it will be okay for him to just put Herc on a stretcher, and we'll carry a stretcher out through the building outside, put him in the crate, then the forklift will lift him up onto the crate. The moments of greatest stress for Herc are obviously before he's down. It's the presence of the vet, it's the presence of the dart gun and all of that. So that's why we're going to keep it just us and the vets in here until he's down.
Sit down.
Sit down.
Down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. Excuse me.
Just fighting it.
Don't fight it, Herky. Just lay down. Watch your step, Dennis.
Turn you on the side. On the side that way.
To ship a 320-pound gorilla from Washington to Pittsburgh is a dangerous business.
What? Okay, sitting down.
First, the immobilizing drug must do its work. Before Herc can go to Pittsburgh, he must receive a complete physical examination, made possible by the drug that renders him helpless. The medical team works quickly. The drug wears off in just 10 minutes.
Okay, all right. Let's get him in the crate.
Alrighty. Back up, everybody. We use the other door. It's all right. We're all right. We're all right.
Trouble is, we won't be able to reposition him once we get him into the truck, so...
Sorry. Don't want him to choke. It's like seeing your kid go off to college. You know, you're real excited for him. Sure, you're going to miss him, but you know that it's something that has to happen, that they need to do. And this is Herc's shot.
Soon thereafter, in Pittsburgh, Herc met Zakula. After so many years alone, no one was sure what Herc would do. But soon Zakula and Herc were sharing the same space. After 27 years, Herc mated for the first time and now lives with a female, like his cousins in the wild. But Herc remains a zoo gorilla. The visitor can come close to Herc, look up and marvel at his great hairy arms, smell his gorilla smell, but can only imagine him bestriding the African jungles where gorillas make their homes.
Those people who counterpose the imprisonment of the zoo with the real freedom of the wild world are totally wrong. And it turns out that the real world for the great majority of animals is incredibly stressful. It's a place of competition, predation, disease, privation, and social pressures of the most horrendous kind. And animals die of starvation. They're dismembered, alive, in great pain. And the real world of so-called freedom is not a free one at all.
He's a glorious animal, isn't he?
And so it's a bloody mess out there. It's a battlefield. When the Victorians said nature red in tooth and claw, they had it right.
Show your blue eyes. Show your blue eyes.
I think the zoo can give a message of, almost a Disneyland message of nature, that there's these little animals in little cubicles, and they're all happy and healthy and fat, and that we all love them, and they all love each other, and everything's wonderful. And that's not true. It's not true in your house, probably, and it's certainly not true in the zoo. This is like Peyton Place. I mean, they have love affairs, and they have fights, and they have terrible things happening occasionally. There are things that we hide from the public about sort of natural things that happen to animals, and one obvious one is death. You rarely come to a zoo and see an animal lying there dead. If an animal dies in an exhibit, you can bet people snatch it out of there long before the public ever shows up, because that's not what we want to show. Now, I'm not sure that's good. I mean, people ought to know that things die. When I first came to the reptile house, we used to not feed the reptiles during public hours, because many of the reptiles, as you know, eat whole animals. And there was this idea in the zoo that if you fed rats and mice during public hours, that there'd be this enormous hue and cry from the public because they would see these mice dead. I decided to just go ahead and try it.
Oh my gosh. That's cruel, man. What? It goes.
Prey and predator, eating and reproducing, living and dying. The zoo tries to teach us the facts of life. But many species, like the crocodile, are facing extinction. Another fact of life that the zoo never lets anyone forget.
Do you know what's killing the elephants in Africa?
Human beings.
Right, human beings, poachers. And most people think that it's just the poachers who are responsible for killing the elephants. Well, actually, it's us too. We're responsible because people in this country and in other countries buy ivory. And without our supporting the ivory trade, the poachers wouldn't be paid. And if they're not paid, they're not going to go out and kill elephants. So you can help save elephants by not buying ivory.
They're just killing them off everywhere they exist. They're going down by the rate of 70 to 90,000 per year, which only gives them 5 to 10 years before they're gone. We would hope that in the future, there's enough concern by humans to save wild places for animals, not just elephants, but all the other animals. If you save space for elephants, you're immediately saving space for a wide range of other species. That's why elephants are so important. If you can save enough land to save the elephants, you've got it made.
The pressure from humanity is so great that the planet has nearly given up its wilderness. 126 species in the zoo are on the endangered list. The idea of the wild and all that it provided our imagination is becoming an anachronistic myth.
She still hasn't got it. Look at it. There she goes. She got it.
We're losing species every hour. And things we do in zoos can help. You know, they can save the large, conspicuous species, which are sort of flagships for the whole conservation movement.
Wilson takes care of the zoo's big cats.
It's a really neat feeling to come into work and know that you're going to be working with big cats. They're very special to me.
Come on, Taj. Come on. There you go. Hi. Oh, there's people.
Zoos all over the world are trying to breed wild animals to ensure that the species is preserved.
Rio. Hey.
Riau is the National Zoo's only Sumatran tiger, and he is without a mate.
Riau is our Sumatran tiger, who's 5 years old, and we've had him here for about 2 years. He's probably our most laid-back cat in the house.
Sumatran tigers are rare. In the world zoos, there are only 150, and many of them are related to each other. The National Zoo has been trying to find Riau a mate with a different genetic background. It was a collaboration among the international zoo community that helped the National Zoo find Riau a mate on the other side of the globe, in the Jakarta Zoo in Indonesia.
Come on out. Come on out. Come on. There you go.
There they discovered a 157-pound female. Her name is Karinchi. She was born in the rainforest, a wild animal unrelated to any zoo tiger. But it is not going to be easy pairing the two unacquainted animals.
Nice girl. The first couple of weeks, I sat with her for about 2 hours each day, just so she could get to know me and know my smells and everything.
Good? Is it good?
It just seemed like from the first day, she was like, all right, this is okay.
Good girl.
She's just not an aggressive cat at all.
For 2 months, the female, Karinchi, lived right alongside Riau. But they never saw one another. Instead, they grew accustomed to each other's smell. In the wild, the female might accept or reject her mate. In the zoo, if they are put together too soon, the danger is that they will kill one another.
We hope that she will get along with Riau. He's so laid back that I think that they're going to get along, as long as she doesn't beat up on him.
At last, Riau sees Karinchi for the first time.
Oh my God. He is in love with her. He just thinks she is the greatest thing. It's incredible. He greets her. He doesn't greet any of the keepers. He only greets one other cat in the building. He's just in love. And he really wants to get close to her, and she's just not ready yet. And I think it'll take her a little while, but eventually she'll give in to him. But he loves her. It's incredible.
It will be 6 more months before Riau and Karinchi will be allowed to mate. Perhaps they will soon bear tiger cubs. Meanwhile, the 400 Sumatran tigers in the wild are fast disappearing. Will one day our only experience of tigers be of zoo tigers? The zoo can only remind us of what one day may be no more.
Being asked to save the species at risk in zoos is like being asked to save the paintings in the National Gallery if it were on fire and you had 5 minutes in which to save something. The best you could do would be to rush inside and stick a couple of paintings under your arm and rush out again. And you'd probably save the ones that you were most fond of, in my case probably Bruegel's. But you couldn't expect to save the whole gallery, and the real response is to put the fire out and not rush in to save something. And what we should be doing in the world is not trying to save species, but to try to save the systems in which they live naturally.
Real quiet. That's okay, they're not still. Oh, they're moving now. They're moving.
The animals inside this fiber box are part of an international plan to help put out the fire.
Point it over there and then bring it back. Yeah. The signal is fading now. Right, okay. Okay, it's getting stronger as it comes back around.
We're in great shape. Now we just have to have some monkeys come out.
Yeah.
And this is a monkey that's so intrinsically beautiful. It's a kind of golden halo of fur around a nice little beast that hops around.
Golden lion tamarins. South American monkeys in danger of extinction. Born in the Los Angeles Zoo, they have spent their entire lives in cages. None of them has ever seen the sky. In several months, the zoo will return them to a strip of land on the coast of Brazil to alert people everywhere to the disappearing rainforest. These are zoo monkeys that have to learn how to act like wild monkeys.
You raise these beasts in a zoo for 3 generations, and it's like the welfare state. They're used to regular food, all chopped up, and they're used to perches on which they can move around that don't move, and they're the same place from day to day. And when they get into the real world, the bananas aren't chopped up, you know, and they don't know how to unzip a banana and get inside. They don't know how to find food.
Ropes substitute for vines, and feeders are designed to encourage them to forage.
That one right there, look, that's Harriet, right there.
Yeah,
look, see, that's Harriet.
I can tell which is which.
They all look about the same,
yeah.
you know?
Over there, you can see the dye markings that have been put on their tails.
The zoo is not only educating the monkeys, they're educating people as well.
See him, Katie?
The young ones have the best chance to stay alive, learning to climb rainforest trees instead of ropes, and foraging for insects instead of packaged food. With luck and their new skills, they will propagate a new breed of truly wild golden lion tamarins.
What we have in a zoo is a great educational experience for the preservation of life in the wild. We need the profound educational effect of exposure of urban populations of human beings to the wonder and variety of life on Earth. And as we become increasingly concentrated in concrete jungles, we need to bring something of the real jungle into people's lives to make them appreciate how gorgeous, marvelous, wonderful, tragic, exciting all this is.
By educating visitors to the complexity and diversity of life, the zoo hopes to inspire a concern for all living things.
Well, snakes don't have wet skin. You know who has wet skin?
Bela Demeter knows many people believe the fear of snakes is instinctive.
He looks like he's wet.
In the zoo's reptile house, he tries to change their minds.
Oh, he's real pretty, isn't he? Touch my hand. Even people don't like snakes like this guy, right? Uh-oh, we got somebody here's a phobiac. That's all right. We don't have to touch it.
I think one of our jobs, one of our missions, is to try to steer those people who are on the ooh, ugly, awful side over to, isn't that beautiful?
You know what most people say when they see a snake? The 2 words that always follow snake? Kill it.
Kill it,
That's
yeah.
what they always say. Oh, snake, let's kill it. And I don't know, why would you want to kill something like this?
I think one of the neatest things that happened to me when I came to the zoo is I looked in a cage one day and there were these little babies, miniatures of the adults. And it's so cute because reptile babies are not like mammalian babies. I don't like mammal babies. A lot of people go, oh, goo, guys, not cute, and you know, your baby's so sweet. I've never met a baby I liked. I don't think they're cute. I don't think they're attractive. They're absolutely disgusting little animals. And the baby humans look like baby mice, you know, and when they grow older, they're more appealing. But reptile babies are exact miniatures of the adults. And they're so precious. They're like little gems, you know?
This is an animal that is found around the coast of the United States, up in the Pacific Northwest. This one was collected out of Puget Sound. I'm hoping the octopus will notice this. They really prefer live food items, and particularly crustaceans.
The whole history of zoos has been one where we've defined wildlife based on the cute and cuddlies and the things that people normally get to see, animals like us. And in fact, most of the animals in the world are invertebrates, the insects. The most important life form there is, insects. And all the animals in the sea, most species are invertebrates.
We tend to favor animals like ourselves. Jaron Horsley helps visitors appreciate creatures who are very different.
These animals that make up all the wildlife, and invertebrates are the biggest part of it. We need to tell people about that. People will have a tendency to look at animals with eyes and identify with them, and what we've tried to do here is take an animal, an invertebrate that has eyes and is a real animal, such as a cuttlefish or an octopus, and say, okay, here's one you can identify with, and then we can take a step away from that and say, now here's an animal like a coral that has no eyes at all, really hasn't got a body that you're familiar with. In fact, it looks more like a flower or a plant, but in fact, it's an animal too. It's as much an animal as an elephant is.
That's a cockroach.
Yeah. Do you want to try these?
Don't want to hold one. You can hold one.
Can I? Maybe I can. Let's see. The point is, if you could hold one of these, you'd be great, you know? It's a little
See, they
rather quick.
skitter.
Yes, they do.
It's yucky. Ew, but I can't.
Here, I tell you what, you can do it like this. If you give him a safe place, he'll be happy. Just put your hand up flat, and I'll let him crawl across your hand, and I'll put my hand on the other side, and then I'll go to mine.
Ew.
Hey, good move.
Yeah.
See what's happening with that one up there? It's waving its wings a little bit.
Yeah.
This is a kind that never does get wings as an adult. This is a hissing roach from Madagascar. You definitely don't have the kind of yuck feeling that you did before.
We're really trying to have people see animals as being equal to us, but very different. I don't mean that to sound like an animal rights statement at all. It isn't. It's respecting animals for being co-inhabitants of the planet. You can't ever know them. You can't really understand them. Animals really don't have the feelings that you have. And they're mysterious and distant, but at the same time right next to you.
Move up. Nancy, come here.
After months of hard
Move
work,
up, Shanti. Move up, Ambika.
Melba's dream to be accepted into the elephant family has come true.
All right, come in line. Foot.
She has become an elephant leader.
Foot. Ambika.
Every day, zoo people confront all the difficulties of sharing our planet with the other animals.
All right, Ambika, trunk. Shorty,
With the wild world far beyond our reach, they do what they can to awaken our instinctual sympathies.
All right, take a bow.
We must face the fact that we have become the keepers of the planet. It is for us to decide what kind of keepers we will be.
Ever seen an elephant have a bath before like that? Isn't that fantastic?
You know, my life has been essentially an obsession with animals. It's enlivened and enriched and supplemented my life. There's always been joy in a relationship with some kind of animal or discovering something about an animal. There's a feeling of affection and closeness that I think is a remarkable mental stimulation.
If you're playing in water as a human being, you do it with your hands, but if you're an elephant, you can do it with your posterior. And your ears, damn it. Look at that. It's crazy.
And still, in spite of our immemorial bond, the animals remain aloof, a mysterious nation unto themselves. As we journey together through a vast and unsympathetic universe, they are our only companions. And though we reach out to them, they remain silent.